There is a dangerous lie that gets passed around modern corporate America. It's the idea that everyone is replaceable, that every employee is just a cog in a machine, and if you swap one out to save a few pennies, the machine just keeps on running. But anyone who has ever built a machine knows the cold, hard truth. Some cogs are load-bearing, and if you pull them out by mistake, the whole factory collapses. If you've ever had an arrogant boss who thought your job was easy just because you were good at it, this story is for you. But before we get into how a 28-year-old MBA graduate destroyed a $40 million logistics network in a single afternoon, and exactly how I legally charged him $500 an hour to fix it, do me a favor, hit the like button to feed the algorithm so others can hear this. And please hit subscribe. We are pushing hard for our first 100 subscribers on this channel, and your support is the only thing that keeps this community growing. Help me reach that milestone. Now, let's talk about malicious compliance. My name is David. I am 44 years old, and for 14 years, I was the senior systems administrator for a regional freight and supply chain company based out of Chicago. We moved everything from critical medical supplies to automotive parts across the entire Midwest. The actual backbone of this operation wasn't the fleet of Peterbilt trucks or the warehouse workers. It was the routing and dispatch software. It was a heavily customized, Frankenstein's monster of a legacy database built on an old AS400 architecture. It was incredibly ugly, it ran on green screen terminal emulators, but it was absolutely bulletproof. I know it was bulletproof because I wrote half the custom patches that kept it alive over the last decade. My job was quiet and completely invisible to the higher-ups. I sat in a server room kept at a constant 64 degrees, drinking terrible coffee, writing SQL scripts, and running nightly database indexes. I made $94,000 a year. It was a fair salary for the region, and I never missed a day of work. I was a ghost in the machine, making sure the company's heart kept beating. Then came the private equity buyout. Our old founder retired, and a Wall Street firm bought us out. They immediately sent in a corporate restructuring team to trim the fat. Leading that team was a guy named Bradley. Bradley was 28 years old, wore Gucci loafers to a dusty logistics hub, and possessed a master's degree in business administration from a school his father undoubtedly paid for. He spoke exclusively in empty LinkedIn buzzwords: synergy, agile optimization, and AI-driven streamlining. His mandate was simple: cut operational costs by 15% before the end of the third quarter to trigger his own massive performance bonus. Bradley didn't understand the AS400 system. More importantly, he didn't want to. He looked at a payroll spreadsheet, saw my $94,000 salary for a guy who just sat in a room with computers, and saw an easy win for his budget. The meeting happened on a Tuesday at 4:30 p.m. I was called into a glass-walled conference room. Bradley was sitting at the head of the table, tapping a silver pen on a legal pad. A woman from HR was sitting right next to him. If you've ever worked in corporate, you know exactly what that setup means. "David," Bradley started, giving me a perfectly practiced, completely fake, empathetic smile. "We're pivoting the company toward a cloud-native, automated IT infrastructure. The truth is, maintaining legacy systems just doesn't align with our forward-looking verticals. We're outsourcing our basic server maintenance to an overseas vendor, which means we are eliminating your position effective immediately." I didn't get angry. I didn't raise my voice. I looked at Bradley and then at the HR rep. "Bradley," I said slowly, trying to give him one last chance. "The automated routing system requires a manual encryption handshake every 48 hours to communicate with the Federal Department of Transportation compliance servers. If that handshake fails, the entire dispatch terminal network locks out by default. It's hard-coded into the legacy system for security." Bradley actually chuckled. He looked at me like I was a dinosaur holding onto a meteor. "David, I appreciate the concern. Really, I do. But my new managed IT vendor assures me that their modern AI tools can handle basic API pinging. We are going to be fine. Please hand your keycard to HR, and they will walk you through your severance package." I could have argued. I could have drawn him a diagram showing how he was about to drive a multi-million-dollar logistics company straight off a cliff. But I didn't. When a man holding a match tells you he doesn't believe in gasoline, you don't argue with him. You just step outside the blast radius. "Okay," I said quietly. I signed the severance paperwork, 3 months of pay and standard COBRA health coverage. I packed up my mechanical keyboard, my French press, and 14 years of institutional knowledge into a single cardboard box. I walked out to the parking lot, got into my car, and drove home. I didn't set an alarm for the next morning. I slept in. I made myself a proper bacon and egg breakfast, because I knew exactly what was going to happen. The security encryption handshake was scheduled for Thursday at exactly 2 a.m. And Bradley, with all his synergy and his offshore IT experts, was about to find out exactly what load-bearing meant. Wednesday was the most peaceful day I'd had in 14 years. I drank coffee on my porch. I mowed my lawn. I didn't check my phone. I didn't think about routing tables, server loads, or encrypted mainframes. I was a free man. But while I was enjoying the sunshine, a ticking time bomb was counting down in a server room kept at exactly 64 degrees. At precisely 2 a.m. on Thursday, the AS-400 legacy system reached out to the Federal Department of Transportation servers, asking for the manual encryption handshake. It was a strict security measure put in place after a massive data breach in the late 2000s. The system waited. It listened. But the offshore IT team that Bradley hired had no idea the protocol even existed. They were trained on modern cloud apps, not 30-year-old green screen architecture. At 2:01 a.m., the system executed its hard-coded failsafe. It locked every single dispatch terminal across 6 states. I didn't see the chaos firsthand, but I got the play-by-play later from a buddy on the loading dock. At 5:00 a.m., the first wave of drivers arrived to get their manifests. Instead of digital routing sheets, the dispatchers were staring at black screens with a single line of flashing text. Fatal error, ... Compliance handshake, failed. Terminal locked. By 6 a.m., pure panic set in. We were a regional freight hub. Every hour those trucks sat idle, the company bled roughly $40,000 in delivery penalties. We had temperature-sensitive medical supplies sitting on loading docks. We had automotive factory lines in Detroit waiting on just-in-time parts. If those parts didn't arrive, the factories would shut down, and our company would be liable for hundreds of thousands of dollars in damages per hour. Bradley's agile optimization was burning the company to the ground. His offshore IT team spent 4 hours frantically trying to reboot the servers, which only triggered a secondary security lockout. They were completely paralyzed. At 8:14 a.m., my cell phone rang. The caller ID said, Bradley, corporate. I took a slow sip of my coffee, let it ring 3 times, and answered. Hello? David, hey man, it's Bradley. His voice was an octave higher than usual. The fake corporate smoothness was completely gone. He sounded like a man drowning in a very expensive suit. Listen, we're experiencing a minor technical hiccup with the DOT servers. Do you happen to remember the admin override code? Bradley, I said, keeping my voice incredibly calm. I gave my severance paperwork to HR on Tuesday. I am no longer an employee of the company. I know, he stammered, but this is an emergency. The whole Midwest fleet is grounded. The board of directors is calling my cell every 5 minutes. The overseas guys can't figure out the legacy code. I just need you to log in remotely and push the handshake through. It'll take you 5 minutes. I leaned back in my chair. This was the moment, the beautiful, crystal clear moment of malicious compliance. I can't do that, Bradley, I said. Under the Federal Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, accessing a corporate network after termination is a felony. I could go to federal prison. I'm sure your new AI tools will figure it out eventually. Good luck. I hung up. I knew he would call back. He didn't have a choice. The company was hemorrhaging money by the second, and he was the guy holding the knife. When my phone rang again exactly 90 seconds later, I let it go to voicemail. When it rang a third time, 10 minutes later, I picked it up. David, please! Bradley was literally begging now. I will authorize a one-time cash bonus of $2,000 if you fix this right now. $2,000? I asked. Bradley, if I understand our SLA contracts correctly, you are currently bleeding about $50,000 an hour. $2,000 is an insult. What do you want? He yelled, his panic completely taking over. Just tell me what you want. I am currently unemployed, I explained calmly. However, I do operate as an independent IT infrastructure consultant. I can certainly help you resolve your crisis, but my rates reflect the critical nature of the emergency. Fine, what's the rate? I smiled at the wall. $500 an hour. minimum guarantee of 40 hours paid up front, plus a legally binding contract reinstating my original severance package. There was dead silence on the line. $500 an hour for a 40-hour minimum was $20,000 for a single morning of work. That is extortion, Bradley hissed. No, Bradley, I replied cheerfully. That is the free market. That is agile optimization. Do we have a deal, or should I go back to mowing my lawn? There was a long, heavy pause on the phone. I could practically hear the gears grinding in Bradley's head as he weighed his massive ego against his crumbling career. The silence was broken by the sound of a ping on my laptop. It was an email alert from a major regional hospital, automatically CCing the admin group, which I was still technically on, warning of a critical delay in blood supply deliveries. "Send me the contract," Bradley choked out. His voice was completely defeated. "I'll email the DocuSign to you and the VP of Human Resources," I said. "I actually had it drafted yesterday by my lawyer. Once both signatures are verified and the $20,000 is wire transferred to my LLC, I will begin my consulting hours." It took exactly 18 minutes for the digitally signed contract to hit my inbox, along with a confirmation of an expedited wire transfer from the corporate finance department. I didn't rush. I didn't even put on a tie. I sat in my home office, wearing a faded band t-shirt and gym shorts, and opened my secure VPN. With the legal protections in place, I accessed the legacy AS400 terminal. The beautiful glowing green text cascaded down my screen. I navigated to the hidden command line, typed in the manual encryption string I had memorized 6 years ago, and hit enter. It took exactly 45 seconds. The screen flashed, handshake accepted. Secure connection established. Terminals unlocked. Across 6 states, hundreds of dispatch screens lit up simultaneously. Printers started spitting out manifests. The loading docks roared back to life. The bleeding stopped. I closed my laptop, walked to the kitchen, and finished my coffee. I had just earned $20,000 in under a minute, and I still had 39 hours and 59 minutes left on my guaranteed retainer. I spent them playing video games, watching movies, and occasionally answering panic-stricken emails from the offshore IT team with simple yes or no responses. But the story doesn't end there. Because in corporate America, a disaster of this magnitude requires a brutal post-mortem, and the board of directors wanted blood. The following Monday, the private equity executives flew in from Wall Street. They audited the downtime. Between the SLA penalties from the automotive factories, the lost freight contracts, and the emergency logistics rerouting, Bradley's little cost-saving stunt had cost the company roughly $1.4 million in a single morning. And sitting right in the middle of that audit file was my independent contractor invoice. $20,000 signed and approved by Bradley himself, explicitly proving that he had fired the only person who knew how to run the company just to make his quarterly budget look good. I wasn't there for the final meeting, but my buddy on the loading dock told me it was spectacular. Bradley was called into the exact same glass-walled conference room where he had fired me, but he didn't come out with a severance package. Because his actions were deemed gross operational negligence, he was terminated with cause. No golden parachute, no performance bonus. Security escorted him out of the building in front of the entire operations floor. He was carrying his designer belongings in a cheap cardboard box, looking exactly like the replaceable cog he thought I was. As for me, I kept the 20 grand. I kept my original 3-month severance. And a month later, I accepted a senior systems architect position at a rival logistics firm for 30% more than I was making before. Sometimes the best way to deal with an arrogant boss isn't to fight back. It's to simply step aside, hand them the controls, and watch them crash the plane. If you loved watching this arrogant manager get exactly what he deserved, comment the word untouchable down below. Don't forget to hit that like button to feed the algorithm. And please, if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. We are grinding hard for our first 100 subscribers, and every single one of you clicking that button makes a massive difference for this community. Thank you, and see you in the next one.